What's up, guys? So I'm in the car today here, and with this whole coronavirus quarantine thing going on, I don't really know what to work on because I don't have a lot of stuff to do other than those control arms, but it's kind of hard to do when you're like locked down and all that. And Paulie is the one that's doing all the fabrication work on it and things like that. I'm taking my interior apart, I guess because I'm bored, and I'm gonna check out some of the wiring, because when I wired my gauges, I didn't really do the best job a couple years ago when I did it. So I think I'm gonna kind of look it over and figure out. I think my skill in wiring after doing my engine harness and things like that has gotten a lot better from when I did all this wiring under here the last time. So I'm gonna take a look at all the wiring stuff and things like that inside the car. And I mean, we have plenty of time before season starts, if it ever starts, and go over and see what I can redo and clean up and just make it look better. So I'm here in the interior of the car. I took my steering wheel off here, took the side panel off here. My handbrake's just kind of chilling. One screw on that side, 2 screws here, and 1 screw over there on that side. And then I took this switch panel here, I fed that through. This switch panel here, I just took the screws out, gonna feed that through. My battery's out of the car, so I don't have to worry about stuff touching either, because normally most of these have a positive signal going through them. I have some grounds up here. This is one thing that I wanna get rid of, is having stuff grounding out, like the radio grounds out there. And I think, if I remember correctly, like switches, I think the switches ground out here. So I want to make new grounds because I just don't like the way that is, how the grounds are held in on the radio screws. So that's kind of what I'm talking about with cleaning things up behind here. So the radio attaches to the center console, as you can see. So with that all out of the way, I'm probably going to take this shift extender off. If I can even get it off, I might need to get a wrench. I don't know if I'll be able to feed this up over it, but I don't even think I have screws. There's normally screws behind here. Oh, there actually still is one there on that side. So pop this guy off. This tab broke off a long time ago. So that screw is out. And then the entire center console is now free. I will unplug the cigarette lighter, and there's a light bulb socket in there once it's pulled up, and then yeah, I'll just lift the whole thing out. All right, so there it is down there, and this is what everything looks like under here. I forgot I had to unplug the MFI relay on the outside of the center console there, and then this was the plug for the cigarette lighter and all that. So under here we have an organized mess of wiring. I was right, that ground on the right side of the radio grounds the switch panel for the lights, and then it grounds this switch panel, the lights for this switch panel as well. Everything kind of just loops across and then comes out. And same with this, you can see the white wires, they loop from one to the other, and then they come out to the ground. So I'm gonna try and make a better ground, or have them ground out somewhere that's not next to the radio like that. And then this ground that was on the left side of the radio is actually for the radio. So this is the ridiculous looking radio harness I made a long time ago. And I don't know, I need to sort this out a little bit more. Radio trigger. Oh, so this is the power connection for the radio, for the switch, this switch right here. So that comes from the relay. And then I think this is the power feed for the radio. Yeah, interesting. So this car was broken into at one point, and they tried ripping my radio out way back in the day, and they were unsuccessful, but they screwed up my wiring. So that's why it's just a mess like that. It's really not that bad because it's all taped up, but it's just really ugly looking. And then I have these white wires, which I think are labeled, and they're actually terminated. Power switch red. So these are just terminated from something. I wonder if there's a switch that the relays control that these go to, but I'll have to trace these back because I don't really remember what they're from. It goes in there, but these things have a ridiculously annoying door chimer, so that will stay unplugged. This looks like wiring for one of the gauges. I think the AEM. I think this is all AEM with the nicer loom. And my, oh yeah, it is, because my wideband sensor comes into the floor where the older 2 sensor wire used to come in. So now we're over here on the passenger side, and as you can see, I was a big fan of red wires. So it looks like the main ground for my gauges are these heavier gauge white wires, and they come in, they tie in here, and this panel bolts to the floor. But then I was like, oh, let me also do another ground, and I got this 8 gauge, and that goes also to the floor. However, this ground is loose, so it's like pointless. I don't understand that at all. But so that's a ground for the gauges, and actually, ooh, no, I lied. So I think one is the ground for the gauges, the other one comes up here, and that's the ground for the relays. Now everything works fine, so it's not necessarily I'm trying to fix an issue here. This is definitely some gauge ground action and engine harness ground action right here, but it's not necessarily that I'm trying to like fix an issue or something here. I'm just trying to clean it up, because like, look at all this. That's a power. This is a power. That's a power feed for the gauges. Look how many wires. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wires, and 6, which I don't understand. This goes somewhere. I don't know what that's a power wire for. I'm gonna pull this carpet back too. But like, that's a feed coming off of like a 15 amp fuse, because gauges don't use a lot of power, and you can, like, this worked. But it just was less than ideal. And yeah, and then like, I don't know what this plug's for here, but apparently nothing important. All these red wires are labeled that come to the switches, so that's fine. Like, I'm not worried about that. I'm not changing up the switch setup. But yeah, there's just some cleaning up to do. So I'm gonna keep peeling the layers back here, and like, I found this glove underneath the carpet. So I'm gonna keep peeling back the layers here and kind of just come up with a plan of attack to get this thing looking better. All right, so I know it still looks like a mess down here, but I already got 1 gauge's wiring out of the way. The oil pressure gauge, you can see the wires are tucked away up here. This is the sensor wire for it, and then the power comes out of this stuff. This basically just, or actually it's not the oil pressure, I'm sorry guys. This actually is for the boost gauge. So this just provides power to the sensor so that it can read whatever boost or vacuum the engine's pulling. So what I did is I shortened the wires, I rerouted them, untangled them from everything else, because they were like all tangled up with stuff down here on the floor. That was actually an unnecessary amount of wire for just a boost sensor. And then there was a little bit of slack, so I just coiled it up and I tucked it up here above the lower air vent. So that's in a good spot there, and it gets it all out of the way and untangled from all of this stuff. Next, I think I'm gonna go toward the water temp gauge. That's this guy right here. There's a lot of slack in this yellow wire that comes across the floor here. So what I'm gonna do is try and probably route that up how these are, but have it come up and all the way behind here and meet the sensor wire right about here. So it'll get that up and out of the way, and yeah, we're getting somewhere. I'm just trying to get like all this wiring and stuff off the floor, because it was literally just a tangled mess. So that will help. And then like this is the dimmer wire for the 2 Pro Sport gauges up top there. And I'm like, this is unnecessarily long. I'm probably just gonna coil this up and zip tie it up in the dash up there, probably just so it's out of the way. And then yeah, we'll just keep, you know, poking around and seeing what kind of stuff I can fix and adjust. So I just did this water temp sensor wire. This is what I'm using here. They're crimp connects, but they are the ones that you heat up and they like heat shrink around and create a seal and basically seal the crimp connect to the wire, so it can't it really can't loosen because it like shrinks the whole thing in, so it really can't loosen and it can't like vibrate out and pull apart from each other, because it seals to the wire itself. So I really like these connections as opposed to these connections, because these guys, you know, over time they can become loose and there's no weather protection. Granted, in the interior of the car you don't really necessarily need weather protection, but and you know, I just like using these on the car now for any kind of projects that I do, just so I know that I have a joint that will stay in good shape for the time that I need it to. So this guy's up here. I'm gonna pull that back. Got a surprising amount of slack on this one. I'm going to throw some zip ties down here to keep all these two sensor wires for the Pro Sport gauges together, and then have them split off right there, and have this guy come over, and I'm going to coil this up and tuck it back there in the corner. I could have shortened it, but you know, I like to leave a little slack in case I change anything up down the line with the gauges or anything like that. All right, so I ended up getting all the sensor wires rewired. So those green wires are up in here. I threw them in some loom. You can see the braided loom right here. This is those orange wires I was talking about. I'm probably just gonna leave them for now. I rehung the panel here. This plug is for the factory gauges, the factory tri-gauge cluster, so I'm gonna keep that up there. This guy, I only have one zip tie in, so it's not holding straight, but it looks a lot cleaner. There's gonna be no wires on the floor now. Before, it was just a mess of wires crossing the floor underneath the floor panel and all that. These wires are still just for the switches. I got the oil pressure sensor wire that was like a ton of slack over there and crossed all the way over here to then come up here to this gauge over here. Now it just goes from the gauge straight down to the sensor. So making some progress here. I'm gonna have to plug these two holes back here. They were where my handbrake lines used to run through when I had the stainless braided lines, and now they're just open. I can actually see the pavement through this bottom hole. So I'm gonna get some rubber grommets in there, vacuum this all out. And for now, I think I'm gonna leave it like this. I'm gonna zip tie these together, and I think the only other wire that I want to clean up is one of the white ones that crosses over from that side over there. But otherwise, I'm gonna hook these grounds back up for each row of relays, and we should be good to go. It's just a much cleaner setup in here, and I will also be messing with this radial wiring and trying to clean this up a bit too. So then that will, you know, kind of clean up some of what's going on back here. So taking a step back and looking at it, I like the way this looks a lot better. I have these wires tucked up here. I filled those two holes with grommets. These guys will slide in like that, and then the carpet panel will cover that once everything is tightened back up. So the sensor wires just being out of the way here and rerouted definitely cleans everything up and makes it look better. And I'm also thinking about switching over to this style connector on some of these higher amp connections. So this is the fuel pump one. It was getting hot the one time because of resistance, because it was actually becoming loose inside the connection, and it was getting really hot and it was acting up. And I replaced it with this screwdriver style where you can tighten it and make sure both are tight all the time, and also has a bigger area of contact with the fuse panel, instead of just, it covers like the whole square instead of just like a fork connection. So I had something similar happen with this wire right here, where it got loose, and that's my fan wire, and it actually started smoking in the car on me. So I'm probably gonna switch over to this style for at least the fuel pump, keep it on the fuel pump, and then the fan. And I don't really think there's anything that's like has a high draw. This guy right here I may do as well. It's a 30 ampere. I think that's for the ignition. And other than that, I'll just leave everything how it is, and we should be good to go on the wiring side with everything. I have just about everything wrapped up here. I have the radio back in, the switch panels back in. It's so much cleaner behind the radio now as well, because now that everything's a little more organized. I got both zip ties holding the relay panel up. MFI relay right here is about to be plugged in. There we go. MFI relay plugged in. This ground is tightened, this ground is tightened, everything is good. It's just a matter of sliding the Jester's Chrome ECU back in behind the console there, and then tying these wires up high out of the way of the gas pedal. And then the last thing I'm going to need to do, which I'll probably do on another day, is just this one power feed wire, the switched power. Figure out where it goes to. I know it goes down to the fuse box down there, but figure out why it's there. And if I can get rid of it, I'm just going to get rid of it, because there's no reason to have a ignition switched power just chilling out and, you know, causing clutter. So thanks for watching, guys. Like I said, content is a little hard to come by these days because of the whole quarantining situation and things like that. So like the channel, subscribe to the video, flip that, and I'll see you guys next time.